I remember it quite well. Anyway, I was back in senior in high school, actually, and I was a beautiful sunny day, and I was in a great mood. Just left school, driving back in my little sports car, MG. Those are popular back then. So I was driving back, and it's really funny because you always wonder sometimes how things unfold. But I remember about a mile and a half before the accident scene, I got this really strange gut feeling, about something not so great was going to happen. And I thought, well, maybe I should pull over the side of the road. But uh, anyways, like my hands were frozen on the wheel. It's like, no, just keep driving. And so that was strange. I didn't think much of it, except it was really weird. It's like, well, something doesn't feel right, but I can't seem to let go of the wheel. So I kept driving. And sure enough, I got to this intersection that's on the main highway 101, which is along the Oregon coast. Um, and this big old truck crossed the center line and smashed into my sports car. And in those days, we just had seatbelts, didn't have a shoulder harness or airbags or any of that kind of stuff. But what happened was, as soon as the accident happened, it happened so quickly, it just had a flash of a second to barely register. Um, and then the next thing I knew, of course, I felt this tremendous impact on my head and my upper body. And it was just like basically running into a brick wall, if I could use something to kind of describe it. Tremendous impact. And then I was just kind of in a daze, and then a stupor. And I remember putting my hand up to my forehead, and blood was flying everywhere, and my forehead was all squishy. And I realized at that moment, I've had some interesting things in life before that, but like have gotten really sick kind of thing. But I realized at that very moment that I was going to die. Not just, oh, I think I'm going to die. It's like, no, you're going to die. This is it. And so once I instantly, this all happens actually in such probably a small space of time. But so you're going to die. And instantly when I realized that I was going to die, I felt this like a hand on my shoulder. And I couldn't see anything at that time. I was still slumped back and blood was squirting everywhere. And this hand on my shoulder, you could feel it, and you could feel the presence of this spirit, this being, this angel. I couldn't tell at that time. And he said, "Hey, Rich, we got you. It's not a big," these are the words. Of course, they probably say them to what you're thinking, what your mind can absorb. But hey, Rich, it's nothing to worry about. We've got you. And you've died thousands of times before, was what I was told. So no problem. And at that moment, there was a huge, huge sense of realization instantly that that's right. And so then you just totally surrendered in the moment, and just, you weren't worried. You knew that everything was the way it was supposed to be. And so I was still in and out of it. I remember the police officer came up, and they kind of yanked me out of the car and laid me down. I was bleeding and all this kind of stuff. And I was basically in and out of consciousness. And they took me to the hospital. And I remember bits and pieces of that. And I got to the hospital, and I just bled out. Is what happened. They didn't have my blood type. They didn't have helicopters in those days to speak of, like the life flight and all that kind of stuff. So I just lay there in the hospital, and the doctors I can remember hearing the doctor say, "Oh, he's not going to make it." No. Anyway, and so I just lost consciousness of the doctors talking, and I was in this beautiful space. And I was at that time that I was in that beautiful mind space, that all of a sudden I wasn't there anymore. in the body. I was in this brilliant, absolutely blinding white, pure white. I mean, whiter than white, and blinding and blinding light. I didn't go through any tunnel. I didn't see any relatives. I didn't do this or that. And I was just in this tremendously blinding light, but it wasn't just light. It was, we describe it as love. It was the most unbelievable, overwhelming feeling of love that I've ever felt in my life. I mean, in any loving moments before that and after that, delivering my child and this kind of stuff, every moment is beautiful, but does not even compare to the intensity and the complete volume, endless volume of love that was there. It was it was who we are. It was our level of consciousness that was just pure love flowing. It was just flowing, and it was so intoxicating. It was like, this is who we really are. This unbelievable love. I know, and I probably repeat myself a lot, and that's okay, but it was tremendous. And so I was, so to speak, I thought the light was so bright it was going to burn my eyes out, because I felt very much me, and could see parts of me. And so then I realized it's not blinding my eyes. It's so bright, but it just flows through you. It's part of who you were. But yet I was separate. But I was part of it. But I was separate. And so I was just there for seemed like quite a while. And then all of a sudden I heard a couple of impressions, voices, just like we're talking here. And kind of out of the whiteness came 8 beings, angels, I assume. I didn't know at the time. They didn't identify themselves as such. And they were also brilliant white, just a little off shade different. And so they kind of came out of the white light and spoke to me like we're talking, but there was no lips moving. And they were a little bit blurry. It wasn't crystal clear as far as facial features. You could definitely see the head and the eyes and the body and the shoulders. But it wasn't super clear as far as trying to make out exact features. But one thing I do know is around their head and a little bit over the shoulders was a little, this is what it was a little tinge of gold, a little off color white that was a white gold, just a little bit down around the head, a little across the shoulders. And so they spoke to me for who knows how long, but so they said, we want you to take a look at something. And so I, like watching you here, I watched my life, and like watching a movie, every little bit. Of course, who knows, like I said, there's no time. So I watched my entire life from birth till my death. And it was interesting. It's kind of strange to watch your life. But it was like a movie. And so when I got done watching the life, childhood and everything up to that point, and then they asked me, they said, well, what do you think? I said, what do I think? It was good. It was interesting. And, I did some bad things and did some, a lot of good things. I like people. And I said, we don't care what your life was in that sense. We don't care. What matters is what you think. And so that was kind of reassuring in a way. It's like that, they don't judge you. They just want you to review your life, and it's up to you what you think. So I was there for a little while, and then right after that, I had the thought. It started to hit me. I was like, my folks are going to be fretting about me, and so I started thinking, I wonder if I can see them. So I kept looking around and trying to find the earth. And I looked and I looked and I looked and I thought, and I looked and I looked and I couldn't find the earth. I couldn't find anything, just brilliant white light. And then finally, something started to come into view, and it was dark. Not like night so much, more like a marble or more like something that's shrouded kind of in a fog, a dark kind of fog, part of it. Uh, and and then that was the earth. And it was kind of dark, and maybe, I don't know why, maybe that's because it's a different density here or something like that. But I focused in on the earth, and it was quite dark, and I just kept thinking to myself, they said that's the earth, but I didn't come to the planet then. I didn't try to find my folks or something. I just realized, that they would be missing me and fretting about me, kind of thing. And I felt sorry for that, because they didn't realize I was in such a glorious place. Uh, the energy of that love is so powerful, and these loving beings who just love you. You're just part of them, and they're part of you. And so the separation doesn't exist at the same level that it exists here where I was. So then I asked him, I says, now, I want to stay. I mean, because it was so beautiful. And I wasn't seeing buildings or anything like that. It was just the beauty of being in that white light that was home. That was the deepest home I could ever feel like. It's like this is my home, and it was so wonderful. And so they said, no, you have a whole bunch of things to do yet, so you can't stay yet. But they said, don't worry, you'll be back, and we know right to what you would call the second, when your time is up, when you're going to die. Because in that sense, there's no time, so you're already dead. It just doesn't matter. But you have a lot of things to do. And so he came back, and naturally, we got into the fishing business and charter business, and had a bunch of families to make sure everybody made a living and all this kind of stuff. So, life is busy. But that actually, Jeff, without any dramatic things, that was my near-death experience. And the next thing I knew is I woke up and puking in the hospital, with the head all bandaged up, and the accident had peeled gone up here and peeled part of my skull. So, it was kind of a letdown for a minute coming back. I mean, I was relieved that my parents would understand that I was okay. I was back. But the doctors are so funny in the hospital, because you came from this tremendous high where you really, really felt to me like my home. It's just beautiful. And then, of course, you're back in the reality of a aching, small little anchovy can, the stuff that you're back in this little body again of flesh and bones. And it was like, oh, man. And the doctors, they were so encouraging. Before I woke up, I could hear them. And they were talking about, I don't know. He's got to have way too much brain damage and this and that. It was such a downer, because I knew, hey, they sent me back. It was going to be all right, So that's actually my near-death experience. And been busy ever since.